Aloha,
Aloha.
welcome back to the live. Sorry we're about 30 minutes over, but again, it takes time to get here, and I've had problems with scheduling recently. So hopefully 30 minutes didn't put you guys too far off. But we're gonna start with any questions that you guys want to have, and we'll get into the material in a bit. I'm also gonna set up the computer now, so now that we started, I can actually probably find it. So
Yeah, I'll
see
do
you
a
guys
little
soon.
intro while he does that. So, hopefully, you folks also understand that we've got a little bit of a catch-22 going on where the gym reopened but is still in danger of whether or not it's going to stay open. So, we had a number of clients that come to us to train that weren't able to train at all in March, April, May, or June because of the shutdown of the gyms. So now that the gym's open again, we have a little bit of a backlog in training appointments that we're trying to help those folks that waited for the gym to reopen. And at the same time, we're also accommodating all of you that started to follow us during the lockdown. So balancing that makes it a little bit trickier on the timing of things because sometimes the travel's in the other direction. So in other words, I'll go to Kailua and we'll do something. Seafood Nate and I will do something there. We actually have people waiting for us today in Kailua right after this. So that means that no matter where we are in the progression today, we do have to be conscious of the time frame because of that factor that we have to be there for the kids that are waiting for us to train them at a specific time on the other side of the island. So if this is the island of Oahu, right? If you're looking at it, then right now we're sort of in the mountains in the middle toward the North Shore, but then we have to go around the curve of the mountain all the way up to the bay at the top. And that's where we're at. It's not too crazy far because it's all relative. On the mainland, the distance that we're talking about is nothing. People commute that all the time. But in Hawaii, when people think you're going across the island, they think that that's far. I actually make this journey several times a week because I have students on that side of the island. Seafood Nate makes this journey several times a week because actually he doesn't live there or here. He lives over here on this corner. So he's making sometimes a whole triangle in a day.
Yeah.
And really in a way, that's not all a bad thing if you look at it from a different perspective. So in other words, even Bruce Lee would go to the homes of the different people that he trained, and those of you who have lived in LA know that it's not a small place. LA is pretty big, and like someone could live an hour away and still be in the same town. So it's all a relative thing. So based on that, we do have to be conscious of time. We had a little bit of a huge minor victory on Wednesday because in the sense of this timing thing, we were like exactly perfect with our live Instagram thing of wrapping up our last question within seconds of the time limit. So hopefully we'll be better at that. So please feel free to give us some questions, or our friend Tony, if you're on today, we always like your questions because you've been our most generous supporter with the Super Chats. So if anyone has a specific question, please feel free to address that now in the beginning so that we can actually answer you. Otherwise, another good thing you can do for next week is once this one is actually posted, give us your question in the comments. And then that way, the next week, we can prepare the answer for you. All right? Any questions so far that we have?
So far we just had someone say hello from Mexico. So
hola.
Hello. Hola.
Muchas gracias. I really like Mexico, actually. I have a couple friends there. Our brother within the IMB, Sifu Jerry Archea, he lives there in Mexico City, and he has a really nice gym there called Top Dragon Martial Arts. Top Dragon Martial Arts. So if you're in Mexico City, please see my friend, one of my training partners, partly because back in the day when Sifu Richard Bustillo would have the instructor conferences and coaches clinics, Jerry was another big guy, and so Sifu Richard would put he and I together to hold pads for each other and to grapple together to be able to have partners of similar size. which in real life, of course, you have to prepare for anything. But when you're going to be spending a whole week banging on each other, then sometimes you don't want to have to hold pads for the guy that punches and kicks really hard that outweighs you by a lot, right? So depending on your level of skill, you can adjust that. Certainly in recent years at these conferences, we're each other's primary partners. So he has to learn how to adapt to my power. I have to adapt, of course, to his speed, which both of those are quite cultivated things and not mutually exclusive. In other words, my goal in training him is to help him have the power, the functional power of someone much larger than he is, right? And then I wasn't always such a big guy. You know, I started when I was a little kid and had a pretty similar build to Nate when I was in high school. So I quite often am grateful for the compliment that I'm really a lot faster than I look. But that's because speed was very important to me. From the very beginning, I was trying to be always faster because at that time as a kid, I'm dealing with people that are bigger and older than me. You know, you're dealing with kids that are older, so they're bigger. And you're a kid, so no one's small to you. Everyone seems big to you. And so even in high school when I was tall, I was scrawny. So wanting to have that functional power and speed and cultivate that is something that is not dependent so much on your genetics, on how God created you and the body that you were given. That we can't change too much. But Bruce Lee proved that you can do a lot with what you're given, even if it's not perfect, right? He had poor vision. He had one leg longer than the other. Midway through his career, he had a serious back injury that he had to work through. And in a previous live, we talked about injuries. So don't let what you think you look like limit your potential, because you can be more powerful, you can be faster, you can be more technically skilled, right? All of these things are on you to develop in your growth and expression as a martial artist.
Right, exactly. Don't always just go with the mode of what you think you're supposed to be. There is a lot more than potential for you to grow and explore than just what you're quote unquote made for, I guess. For example, yes, when I first met Professor Kai, I was very surprised at his speed, and he was even much larger at that time, and still fast, and he would have the power behind it. So power and the weight behind that's really dangerous. Like, I was like, wow, to have someone go that fast, but have so much weight and power behind the punch, that's scary stuff, right?
Yeah, because back in the day, you might think I'm a big guy now, but when he met me, I was kind of huge. I mean, at that time, I had played football in college and all this other stuff, and at that time, I was actually still very actively fighting in MMA and grappling competitions where I was already going to be at the maximum weight, so I might as well be bigger. So at that point in time, I was doing also weightlifting and so forth. So I was pretty big. I was a pretty huge guy. Already starting out with a large frame and then putting functional muscle on top of that. So not looks kind of weightlifting, but functional lifting, meaning tons of body weight. I would wake up in the morning and knock out sets of 50 push-ups, 50 pull-ups, and then stack it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and then swing the kettlebells and do the big Olympic lifts, the squat thrusts and all kinds of like core Olympic lifts that power lifters use. Not so much bodybuilding where it's how you look. I was looking at functional power to be able to move guys that could be 400 pounds, because in my weight class in competition, anybody 100 kilos and up was in the same category. So there was no benefit for me to stay at 220. I might as well bulk up functionally and push that threshold to 240, 250 and so forth, as long as it was functional and wasn't slowing me down. So at the time that he first met me, I was pretty much a monster, you know.
Right.
I was Dave Bautista mode, think that way. So
monster, but with speed, like crazy fast. So speed and power, that's a big deadly combination. Another one that reminds you of that is just, if you know who Juji Mufu is, he's a tricker, but he's a really giant, really huge guy, but he's able to do all these jumps and tricks and stuff. So kind of like that. You have something that's an anomaly of speed and power and flexibility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, all these three, like all three in one. Now that's it's a crazy combination.
And that's up to you to cultivate. I mean, one of my teammates, Mateus Costa, who is the founder of Vulcan, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu geek company, he's also a fairly big guy, and yet very, very agile. Backflips, all kinds of tricking and whatnot. But you'd never know it looking at the guy because he looks like a big beastie guy that wouldn't be that agile. So don't let appearances limit you. Don't let assumptions limit you. Envision what you hope to become and work toward it. Looks like we had a question.
Yeah, there was actually just Tony popped in and said hello. So
Oh,
hello,
Tony, our favorite sponsor. How's it going, brother? If you have a question, now's your time, Tony, to ask your question because we'll prioritize you. You've been the #1 supporter of milkshakes and straws for Seafood Nate and I, and we do appreciate it. So, if you're just coming in, we were talking about how don't let your genetics limit your potential. This was something Bruce Lee himself very much worked on, and that's why he pushed the envelope with who he trained with. He would train with big, strong guys that had a skill set, like James DeMille, and on the other end of size on height compared to Bruce, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. And then, of course, he on purpose would work with champions, Chuck Norris, Joe Louis, Mike Stone. Two of my teachers, Al DeCoscos, Rick Alamany, also got to work out with Bruce. So he would on purpose continually sharpen the sword by putting himself up to train with guys that were extremely capable, either in specific skill sets or in specific attributes that he wanted to cultivate his ability to deal with. James DeMille often pointed this out to me, that if Bruce wanted to improve his ability against a boxer, he'd find very skilled boxers to spar. If he wanted to cultivate his abilities with grapplers, he would do the same with grapplers. Judo Gene LaBelle, Hayward Nishioka, both excellent judo men whom I've had the opportunity to meet and train with. Very, very amazing in their skill set, and yet both of them have only words of extreme applause and encouragement and praise for the level of seriousness that Bruce Lee took his training to and his willingness to push the envelope out of his comfort zone into something that they were good at to help him improve, and vice versa, to help them grow in areas that he could help them with. So there was always this kind of symbiosis, if you want to think with the core symbol. There was always this kind of symbiosis going on where a lot of Bruce Lee's people that he trained with were partly students and also partly teachers. They had something to offer him and genuinely friends. And that's something that we've both noticed in working with Sifu Richard Bastillo, Guru Dan Inosanto, Sifu Tim Tackett, many people that were first generation. They on and on and on always mention the friendship that they had with Bruce Lee.
Tony said he had subscribed already to your YouTube as well. Yeah.
Obrigado. Thank you.
And I just asked how everyone's Friday is doing if they had any more questions. Someone was talking about the cross-training comment we were mentioning about sports and martial arts and how that would tie in, and how some sports would probably help martial arts and vice versa. Martial arts would help other sports. But there was nothing specific. If you had a specific example you wanted to.
Yeah, please do. And I'm not sure if many of you are aware of this, but a lot of the top Jeet Kune Do practitioners were actually contracted by the NFL to teach professional football players how to improve their agility. So Tim Tackett, Larry Hartzell, Guru Dan, a lot of the top guys, they actually helped coach professional football players in helping their agility. And certainly that was true for me when I played football. I relied a lot on my martial arts because I did martial arts before I did football, and it definitely helped me. Also something that I did that some of you might laugh, and I don't have them handy, but I have photos to prove this. I also did ballet, right? So all it took was me finding out that Jean-Claude Van Damme did ballet, and then I'm thinking, hey, maybe ballet will improve my martial arts, at least in terms of form. And then I rode crew. I'm not sure if you know what that is, but it's a collegiate sport. So I was on the rowing team, but I was like a caveman on the rowing team because I came from Hawaiian canoe paddling, which is mostly upper body, but rowing crew is mostly core and legs. So my body wasn't quite getting how to transmit that power when I was learning how to row. And my coach actually said, well, you know, you're like a caveman in the boat. If you could just learn how to improve your grace and balance, you'd be the toughest, strongest guy I have in the boat. Because you're a beast, but you're not a controlled beast. You're a wild man.
Right. Huh.
So he made a joke about it, saying, you know, maybe I should do ballet or something. I made a comment to a buddy of mine that I played football with and wrestled with, and he was in competitive bodybuilding. I was not really into the bodybuilding thing. I just wanted the functional strength with the weights. But my friend was a serious bodybuilder. He was like Mr. Teen USA. Like, he was a serious bodybuilder. Only did the all-natural stuff, nothing to do with drugs. And now he's in Washington, D.C. as an officer in the Army. But he said, hey, that's a great idea. Let's do it. So he and I went and took ballet. And everyone teased us, especially our friends from football and wrestling. They all teased us. But then again, you know, how many guys are in ballet? How many girls are in ballet? It actually was kind of a good thing. You know, so that, and actually we were valuable. Even though we didn't have any previous ballet skill, we could do the lifts and we could do a lot of that. And it did actually improve my flexibility and my strength in my flexibility. Meaning, it's one thing to be able to do splits. It's another thing to have power in that fully extended position. So it was a tremendous help to me. And so ballet was good cross training. Also, there's a lot of postures in ballet that are very, very difficult and awkward to perform. And so it's a new horizon as a martial artist to explore that, right? To explore these other avenues of how you could control your body, how you could move through different forms, how you could have a sense of the functional aspect as well as the aesthetic.
Right, that's interesting. Well, that's pretty cool. It also reminds me of a student of mine that also did football, and I was teaching him this Wing Chun movement stuff, and he said it's very similar to what they do to pass around, go through people or go around them, like using the Pak-Tan Pak. They actually she showed me a drill that they would have to do to get around. When someone pushes, they would go here and go through, or they would roll and go 1, 2, and through. Right, so it's interesting how some martial arts have similarities, using kind of like what we use as Pak-Tan Pak to change someone's direction, or to get around, or to find a way through the opposing line person and get to the goal, or to tackle the quarterback, whoever it is.
Yeah, we would use that to clear the line in football, and this is definitely something where martial arts come in handy, especially since in martial arts you're not wearing all of that padding and gear, right?
Yeah.
So it makes you suddenly quite fearless. If you're used to the martial arts avenue, and then you have the gear, like one of the skills I would use was I'd grab the cage, you know, the face protector. I'd literally just grab the cage, and that way my head and body are like one piece. I'd grab the cage and throw my whole self forward into my opponent, and then roll off of him and go through to try to clear the line. So it's just a moment. Like, you're not going to stand there like this, but that way I wouldn't injure my fingers and thumbs. And I point that out because in an actual game, I dislocated my thumb on the line and didn't say anything because it was in the midst of a play. And in that moment that I had a dislocated thumb, I did nail the quarterback, and he fumbled the ball, and the ball fell on my chest. So I hugged it and made the only touchdown I ever made in college football, because I wasn't a receiver. But it was the only touchdown I made. But I made it with a dislocated thumb. And after that, I thought, oh, I've got to protect the digits. I've got to protect my fingers and thumbs when I come through, especially since college professors weren't that sympathetic. I'd be like, oh, I dislocated my thumb, so, you know, can I not have to take the test because I can't write? They'd be like, no, bring a laptop. You can take the test like this. You don't have to use a pen. And I'm like, oh, well, I tried.
Let me check. There was something that was a long comment on, right?
But yeah,
Something
so
about-
back to Mexico, okay?
Yeah. There is a waterfall a few meters from my house. A giant placer reached the top. It's very difficult in stamina terms. You can find wild animals in the forest on this track.
Okay.
A French guy lost himself in the forest. Okay. Nice story. Tony had a question.
Okay, good.
How about mechanics? Has a natural strong hands good grip? Natural strong hands and good grip. So
Okay, so in
mechanics?
terms of mechanics of hand strength, don't neglect the back of your hand. Now, why do I point that out? Because every martial art ad back in the day for grip strength was something kind of cheesy, like, you know, the eagle thing was like this big metal thing with springs and then little holes, and you do this, right? And then the other one for judo were those vice hand grip things that you do this with. And then after that, they had the ones with the individual fingers, right? Where you do this and you do this.
People use it for guitar sometimes.
Right, yeah. Musicians use it too. Piano, one of my piano teachers had us do that because your pinky and ring finger need to have strength and individual coordination. It's kind of difficult to do without something like this. So the idea is you have the little grip thing and you on purpose only do the pinky or only do the ring finger, because without training it, most people can't separate the actions of their digits. The last two end up being very connected and it's difficult. So you have to train it if you want to up your level in piano anyway. Probably true of other instruments as well. But this is only compression. When you're looking at the human body as a machine, you want everything to be in balance. So one of the things that I used to do is I used to put my hand under a pillow and then put a phone book on top of that and lean on it, and I would do this with my hand. I'd like on purpose make my hand go open and backwards as much as it could, so that you're actually working the other side of the muscle, right? Because even in the gym, right, when people are doing weightlifting, they're doing like maybe wrist curls or something like this, but they're not strengthening the back. Now in Wing Chun, we had a technique where we had a weight on a rope with a little stick, and you roll it backwards, and that way you're actually working the back side of the brachioradialis and forearm muscles, which is very smart because in Wing Chun you need Popeye forearms. You need functional forearms.
There was pictures of Bruce Lee doing the very similar
Yes,
thing.
Bruce Lee also did this, and Bruce Lee also invented that one that was like a grip exerciser with the weight. We had trained with it at Sifu Richards' gym. So, and it's also on display at the Wing Luke Museum. Shout out to the Wing Luke, because Nate and I are both members of the Wing Luke Museum in Seattle, which has an ongoing exhibit on Bruce Lee. There's supposed to be a new exhibit on Bruce Lee coming up there. I'm not sure if the opening will be on time or delayed though because of the global pandemic, but that's coming up fairly soon, and we're looking forward to that if it reopens and if we're allowed to travel by then. It's a very tricky time that we're all in, and we're having to work around that. Not sure if you folks follow me here or here on YouTube or on Facebook or Instagram, but I wrote a post about this, about how to be a martial artist is to, by nature, to improvise, adapt, and overcome. And so right now, what you're sharing in with us right now is what I wrote about. Meaning that if anybody can adapt to adverse conditions, it should be martial artists.
That's actually where I got the picture from for the post today. So that was, he posted a bunch of different people who actually did live video workouts or something to that extent from long distance. And it was about, exactly what we're doing today.
Which included us, because doing this with Sifu Nate for you was one of the things that I mentioned in that post, because what are we going to do? We're martial artists by nature. That's who we are. We can't not train. So, and yet martial arts is something that inherently requires like intimate level close contact, right? Combat distance. And so how do you keep training? Well, this is one of the ways, right? You can have training partners where you know you're both healthy enough to train with each other on a limited level, not exposing yourself to everyone. But a lot of what we've had to do in order to interact with you, as well as some of our teachers, has been to access online.
And sometimes we have supporters like Tony, who just gave us $10. Thank you again, Tony.
Tony, you're the man. You're like our favorite.
For being so generous every
person.
week with us.
Yes.
And if you guys know what that is, he just used a super chat. You can click below where you can comment. There's like a $ thing. It's kind of like a donation you can give for the time that we spend with you to offer you this information and be conversing with you as well, to ask questions or answer questions, or even to get you thinking about things you never even thought of before, right? So, and it also gives us time to suggest new videos. So Tony, if you have any thought of recent videos we've done or in these lives, let me know what you want to see. We've done a lot of wooden dummy work recently, and a few things about Bruce Lee's quick front snap kick and his straight
and
lead.
the Silam Tao. We went over
Silam Tao.
applications, especially the first third. But so Tony, to finish answering your question, if nothing else, you want to make sure you're balanced in compression and extension. So if I took something as simple as your pillow that you sleep on every night, you can squeeze the pillow as hard as you can, and once you squeeze it, you don't just hold it, but move it around clockwise and counterclockwise. So literally you could do this when you're waking up. Like I'm waking up and I go, rah! Squeeze this way, squeeze that way, other side, rah! Squeeze this way, squeeze that way. Although right now that's easier to do probably if you're single. If you just got married, like Sifu Nate, maybe make sure your wife's on board with waking up to you doing your drills on your pillow, because she's right next to you. She might freak out. But then the other one is extension. I can use my own body weight and lay on the pillow and then open my hand, even under my head. Open my hand to get that. And again, part of this idea is all the angles. So I'm gonna pinky high, index finger high, middle finger high, thumb high, working those angles. So on a no gym equipment thing, just using your own body weight and pillows, you can do it. Also, who's been to like a doctor's office or a dentist's office where it's crazy cold?
Yeah.
Okay? Sit on your hands and let your butt be that thing that you exercise against, right? So you're doing extensions while sitting on your hands, right? And because you love yourself, you can also do compressions. Reach back, grab the peaches, and start squeezing the big momotaro of your butt, right? But you can use, this could be a t-shirt, my butt is my gym. But yeah, you can do extension and compression, pillow, your butt, right? If you do have access to equipment, then one thing is use a dumbbell and make circles like this. Not very heavy weight, like 10 pounds. Make circles, then go this way like a vertical punch, right? Then inverted, right?
And definitely reminds me of basically the Silam Tao form and the ones later, Chimkyu and Byuji. They do these kinds of movements. You know, with especially this with the Byuji, and then in the beginning Silam Tao, you're doing full wrist movements all the way around. So yeah, it's wrist strength and mobility is extremely important in martial arts.
I'll give you an example because it's within arm's reach.
Okay.
So, kettlebells, right? So, depending on your strength level, I always tell people, start out way lighter than you think. Because there's tiny little muscles and fibers, and you don't know which ones are strong or weak, and you don't want to hurt yourself and have a partial tear on a tendon or ligament or something. So, like, you could even support it, right? I could even support it, and then all I gotta do is that, and use my finger strength and forearm strength to support the weight. And now this is balance, extension, compression, forward and back, right? That's all I'm doing is balancing, and I'm talking to you while I'm doing it, right? And then you do the same thing on the other side, okay? Now again, you guys should not try to do this right out of the gate with 35 pounds or whatever. You should use a very, very light one to get started. And then from there, whenever you start to feel yourself not be as strong, then you just switch. And notice how I actually swing the switch. So I'm going in a natural controlled position for my shoulder in front of my body. I swing it the other way and I go back to the other side, right? You see it? So you're able to get your weight under the weight and control that with your grip. So with a kettlebell, that can be an extremely good way of getting your functional grip, right? And you might not know this, but my regular job is not teaching martial arts. My regular job's actually in the healing side, in emergency medicine and in massage therapy and so forth. So actually, I functionally use the hand strength all the time on my patients. And he's my witness. I have some pretty big patients, right?
Yeah,
like
right.
Grandmaster Don. I have some pretty big patients that are built like bears. And so I need to have the functional strength over time, meaning I'm working on this person for a really long time. I can't just fatigue. So it's not just power, it's endurance. See? So, and for martial arts, you don't want just, I can crush a rock sudden type of strength. You want to that sustained ability that if you had to, you could be catching and crushing pebbles all day, right? I think there was some Japanese film where the guy did that.
Oh, crushing the rock?
Yeah. It was like, right?
Right.
I think I remember seeing that. But in concept, right? It's actually kind of easy to do with pieces of concrete that aren't real solid. But in concept, this is to answer Tony's question, who I'm very grateful for because I think he just treated us to lunch. But the concept is with nothing, with no equipment, you can use your pillow. When you're out and about, you can use your own body. Like I said, you could use your buttocks or whatever. Or with equipment, you can use a dumbbell, which would be easier to start with. And then when you get a little better, you can use a kettlebell. So I'm balancing and strengthening, right? And I'm on purpose moving a little bit so that now you're also getting functional shoulder and chest and back strength because you're having to move this around under space, right? So it's not just a fixed static movement. So in terms of grip strength, I feel like those are good places to get started. If you have like a 10-pound disc weight or dumbbell and you want to put that on a cord and put the cord on a stick, you could do that rolling drill, which I came up in Wing Chun doing that to strengthen the forearms that way. And we would do it this way and we would also do it this way. But this way is the one that everyone neglects. Everyone neglects the extension. And think about this because someone else was asking yesterday about speed during the other live session. Extension is super important for speed. Extension is what helps carry your arrow out of the bow. So if you only have compression strength, that's good for grappling. But if you want to be able to hit fast and hard, you need that extension. You need to be able to get your extensors working. Right?
Yes. Thank you, Tony, for wishing me a happy wedding. Yes, thank you very much. It was last year, and so it's been about a year now that I've been married, actually a little over a year.
May Day of last year, May 1st.
And
because May Day is Lady in Hawaii. And I even sang that on the day because I was the pastor for the wedding.
Yeah.
We're like a very unique martial arts school. But so if
everything
you want to get,
you got everything here.
So if you want, here's a great way to plan your wedding and your honeymoon so that you can train with us. Plan to get married in Hawaii, right? And then just tell your fiance, it's a package where the wedding planner pastor coordinators are my martial arts teachers. So it's part of the wedding that I have to train. I have to go and train martial arts in Hawaii with Sifu Kai and Sifu Nate.
Yeah.
And then as part of that, we can also be your tour guides, and we can do your wedding. He has friends that have the video on the drone and all kinds of stuff.
And he did say he's a mechanic, so he does a lot of natural grip strength work.
There, yeah.
And he just told me he was married 27 years, so congratulations.
Oh,
on his
wow.
27.
Well, if you want to renew your vows, come on down.
Right.
But absolutely, that's an excellent point. So you're a mechanic, you understand what I'm talking about, working as a massage therapist and paramedic. It's a very much a hands-on physical job where you have functional strength. So a mechanic is an excellent one. A mechanic, a carpenter, people that work with tools all the time. You're going to have also an improved kinetic sense to where you understand where your body is in space, especially in mechanics, because you're dealing with something that's fixed and something creative. You have to find a creative solution, but it has to fit within the construct of the structure you're given, be it a car or a helicopter or whatever type of thing you're working on as a mechanic. One of my longtime students is an aircraft mechanic, and he's often referencing that. But like yourself, he has never had a problem with the grip strength issue because of what he does as a job, other than that particular student of mine is very, very right-handed. So his grip strength is amazing on one side, not so much on the other. So then if that's the case, you want to, on purpose, work on improving the side that's not naturally as strong to be more balanced, right?
Right.
Think about it this way in real life, even though we talk about strong side lead, you might not have a choice. If you're like this with somebody, whatever hand is closer is going to be the lead, right? So it doesn't make sense from a strategic or a tactical standpoint for me to go, oh, the bad guy's here, oh, I got to do this now. Right. It doesn't make sense. It's a waste of motion, right? So you want to be as efficient as possible, and therein is that ambidexterity, which was inherent in Wing Chun. So it was inherent in Wing Chun, given that if you're in a world where you have very little time to train, the idea behind strong side lead was not necessarily that you don't train the other side. It was about winning the beginning, right? If I'm the bad guy and Sifu Nate has to defend himself, right? And he has the speed and the agility, he has the opportunity for the stop hit. And the stop hit means that he wants to be able to hit me first and hit me hard enough that it changes the equation of the fight. Does that make sense? So in other words, I'm approaching, and before I can get him, he wants to meet and greet with that intercept, right? And he wants that intercept to be a fight-ending tool. So pretty much the first person that lands a good one is more likely to win, right? So the big difference is in a lot of other martial arts, the lead hand was used more to check the water temperature, to check distance, and to check your opponent's defenses, to see what they're going to do, right? That's great in a sport, in a combat sport, where you're fighting X number of rounds, that you can have that kind of a strategy. But in a real life fight, you're looking at one round that might only be 7 to 15 seconds long, right? One round. So you need to be able to be very decisive in what you're able to land. Meaning, doing this and missing 8 times means nothing. You need one that lands with accuracy and power to a target that is debilitating. That's what you need. So with that, you can't afford to mess around. So if you only have one chance, then what Bruce Lee was saying was use your more coordinated, stronger side, because you have a higher degree of control and accuracy over that tool.
Yeah. Very good. And also, we're going to have a follow-up question from Tony as well. And also, Michael said congratulations also, so thank you, Michael, again. But he was asking if we punch with gloves and wraps, and my answer, I'm sure he's going to have the same, yes, it's no. If you notice my videos, I'm not wearing any wraps or gloves. Although at the gym we teach at, everybody almost always wears wraps and gloves. Because they're doing boxing or whatever, and they don't want them to get injured or have a boxing fracture or wrist injuries, you know, even the cuts around their hand, they don't want
Well, he already knows the answer. I taught
Yeah.
him since he was in high school. I never told him to put gloves on unless we were doing a particular sparring drill.
Right, if it's sparring, then it's a little different then.
In sparring, it's hygiene and it's injury,
Yeah.
right? So if we're sparring, only because I have them handy here, right? If you're sparring, if you're mainly doing striking, okay, the reason for this is preventing injury to both parties. It's protecting the individual that's getting hit, and in theory, the person's hands, not so much from breaking in this instance, more from like getting cut by someone's teeth or something, right?
Yeah.
But then that's this type of sparring. And then if we're dealing with MMA type of sparring, which actually even for self-defense, that's applicable because you're in real life, you're going to have a situation where you might be grappling, the other person is going to hit you. They're not going to go, okay, I'm in jiu-jitsu class, so no hitting. They're going to try to hit you. So it can be helpful to practice with this again because you don't want injuries in class. Now, on the other hand, when you're cultivating the tool, which is this, when you're cultivating the tool, you need 3 things that this actually is in the way of. 3 things that this is in the way of. Okay? 1, bone density. So unless you actually hit things hard, you're not going to gain any bone density. So what that means is, way back in the day, I would make these guys give me 100 shots on the heavy bag, and then once they're good at that, maybe I'll bring you into the inner sanctum for one of these lives. I have another gym on the other side of my place where I call it the inner sanctum, and I do some private lessons in there and whatnot, because I have some homemade stuff, you know, like James Lee made stuff for Bruce. I did it for myself. I'm not as much of an expert as James Lee, but I have a couple unique things that I built that I use to condition myself. You remember one is I have like iron plates on springs.
Before this gym was made, that was our main gym.
That's where I originally taught him, was my other gym that I built first. But anyway, number 1, bone density. So old school, right? Shaolin Kung Fu, you have a bucket of sand and you'd punch the sand. And right outside here, by the way, it's broken now, but there's an old Chinese planter that was my great-grandfather's, and I used to fill it with beach sand and I'd practice on that. So in the beginning I'd put a towel over the sand and a t-shirt over the towel. Why? Because I didn't want to break the skin. So part of the conditioning, right, is also thickening your skin. Not a problem for us Hawaiians growing up here because our feet, we're always walking on hot sand and not always wearing shoes. So actually the bottom of our feet is quite tough compared to most people because we grow up in an environment that trains our feet. So what I used to teach him when he was a high school kid is we need to make our hands like our feet. Just like Bruce Lee would say, you want to make your feet as accurate as your hands. Well, conditioning wise, I want my hands to be as well conditioned as my feet. So that's bone density. Can they carry the weight and the power? So I put the towel on the sand and the t-shirt on the towel, and I do that till I was pretty comfortable with that. When I could feel the skin just naturally be a little tougher, and I wanted to be like a ninja, pun intended, in that I didn't want to have like big ugly calluses on my hands, especially since I work in the medical field. I didn't want to look like that, and I didn't want arthritis because I wanted to be able to do surgery with my hands. I wanted to be able to, I also am an artist, I paint, and I wanted to be able to paint. I'm also a musician, I play piano. I don't want wasted hands that are like, I'm club hand man. I'm like a rock in my hands. No, I wanted to have the hands of a surgeon and an artist. So I wanted them strong, but I wanted them dexterous, okay? I wanted to still maintain their agility. So then I take away the t-shirt, it's just the towel. Then more conditioning, and then I take away the towel, it's just the sand. And now when I feel tougher, then I would put pebbles, you know, the smooth kind that
like
are sharp.
Like a small
river rock. I'd put those in the sand. So there'd be a few little happy surprises in those hits, right? And you work your way up. This is not a quick thing. I started messing around with this in like 6th grade. And then by the time I finished high school, you didn't want to get hit by my hand. So the first thing was the actual physical conditioning of the bone and the skin, right? That the bone density ups because your body goes, hey, we're taking a lot of force here, so drink some milk and eat some cheese because we need calcium. And then the skin becoming like a little bit like leather in terms of toughness, not necessarily in looks. So that's number one, is that the actual tool itself, right, is tougher. And then number two has to do with functional usage of strength, meaning if you do this a lot, actually hitting with power, then all the tiny little muscles, tendons, and ligaments have to become stronger to be able to handle that force, right? If I never wear wrist wraps, then I need to have a stronger wrist in order to communicate power, in order to carry power from my body through to my opponent, right? So that's number two, okay? So the bone and the skin, the actual hard surface that you're dealing with, right? And then the functional usage, meaning the muscles, tendons, and ligaments that control that bone and skin have to get stronger, right? And then third is the experience. Now, anybody can look cool and be, you know, wah, 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 and they can look cool in air, right? But if that's all you ever hit, the first time you hit a real guy, you're made of glass. It won't hurt because you're not used to it. So number three is, if you hit hard when you train, then you know how to hit hard. So then when it's time to hit for real, you know how, right? It's not a mystery. It's an experience. It's something you know you can do. It's not you think you can do it. It's not that you believe you can do it. It's that you know you can do it because you've done it over and over and over again, thousands upon thousands of times. Just like the saying, I'll let Nate do it, the quote, right, that he does not fear. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah. I do not fear the man who practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man who practiced one kick 10,000 times, right? So repetition, 10,000 kicks, you're going to get better and better at that one, and that's dangerous compared to knowing all these other kicks.
And so then the concept would be that those 10,000 repetitions of that kick wouldn't just be to air, right? You could work your technique only, maybe for a certain number of reps in the air. Yeah. Then you could work your accuracy by just hitting a very specific target with the ball of your foot or whatever striking surface we're using for that tool. Mm-hmm. And then, now you go for the snap, for the pop, bam, bam, bam. And then you go for the power, right? That knockout delivery power, right? And then you go back the other direction. So in other words, up and down the mountain. Can't see our feet, so I'll use my hand, right? So if we're gonna do this, we can stereo punch you in the face. Mm-hmm. First, we're gonna be working on just our technique. So not very fast or anything. In space, we close our hand at just the right moment, bam, right? Okay, so we would do a certain number of reps of this, of the body alignment all being exactly how we want it on that kinetic chain, right? Now we have to work accuracy. So we could hang a tennis ball from the ceiling or whatever, or flip, soccer socks, the really long soccer socks. I used to use those when I was a kid because they were really long. So I would tie the toes together and hang them over my pull-up bar. And that's what I would use. I would have the soccer socks hanging over with one of my sister's hair ties connecting them after the pull-up bar. Mm-hmm. And the socks are hanging down. Yeah, dangling down. And bam! 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 I'm looking to pop the socks, right? I'm looking to pop the socks toward you with accuracy. so that when I barely feel the sock, I'm gone. It's about like touching a hot stove accuracy, right? Then we're going to be working on pop, right?
Yeah.
So that's when, let's say I have a focus mitt. This is another thing you can use the gloves for, by the way. So when I'm training people at the gym, I'll use this like a little focus mitt, right? Because see this little pad? See how small it is? So now Nate has to pop the pad. I come at him and he has to judge the moment, right? So in other words, if he's only working pop, I can just stand here and he can hit it all day long. But if he's working timing and accuracy, then this is anywhere, boop. 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 Boop, 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 boop. Okay, you got it? So in other words, working that strategic accuracy. He's got a moving target, but he wants to make it hurt, right? He's wanting to make that hurt. So there's stationary accuracy, and then there's mobile accuracy, right? Then if we level up from this, now there's more power to it, right? So now I'll go right to right, right? So you can feel, you can hear anyway, he's hitting this quite hard, right? And actually the pad holder has to be very skilled at making it come off right, because I have to very accurately give him the target in the right spot, because now he's not having to find the target's finding him. Okay, so that's how you're going to work the pop of the power. Okay, and then the next level is I would actually have the heavy bag and he'd be hitting it really hard, or the sandbag on the wall, or that contraption that you haven't seen yet, right? So you think of this as like climbing a mountain. Like first you're only working the technique, right? And then you're working the accuracy of the technique. Then you're working, then that would be the sock, right? Then you're working the pop. That would be the handheld thing, working the pop with the glove or with the focus mitt, moving around. And then working the power transmission, right? Which is what we just did. And then finally full-on blasting using the heavy bag or the bob, right? You've seen his videos with the bob. And so that's like 5. So it's like climbing a mountain. I'm going to be at the bottom of the mountain just working on my technique. Then I'm going to be hitting something like a sock on a pull-up bar or whatever. Then I'm working on a moving target to work my accuracy. That's important. Like people neglect that. But in terms of if you really want to be good, you got to remember that in real life, the opponent could be all different sizes and your target might be in a different place. So if you only ever practice your lead hand shot to something that's right in front of your face, and now when you meet the guy, he's taller or shorter, right? Then now what do? You've only practiced that one thing, and then now that's in your way. So you need to be able to practice flexible accuracy where you're actually hunting. Your fist becomes like a guided missile, that it almost has a brain, right? That it can find the target while it's flying. And then you're working on the power transmission, right? And that's, you need someone that's good at feeding, so they can give you a sustained target that'll always be in the same spot, right? A sustained target. Then you work on the full blunt, drive the guy through the wall kind of power. And once you do that, you go back the other direction where you end up nice and light again. This is how, even if you're one of the larger people out there that's built like me, this way you won't be slow, right? Because it's tempting for the big guy to only do the I'm Dave Bautista thing and go, "Ugh!" right? But then that's all you got. You don't have the full range of capable skills. It's also tempting if you're built light and quick to only do the stinging kind of thing. But then all you're going to do is piss off the guy you're fighting. You're not going to really be able to stop them. So to have functional power that stops bad guys, you've got to work this whole mountain up and down and back. And that way, even if we're only talking about one skill, the lead hand punch, then you're developing all those attributes. You're developing the power, you're developing the speed, you're developing the quickness. Quickness and speed are the same thing. Speed is from, A to B. Quickness means I have to respond to a change. I'm punching, his head moves, and I have to adjust mid-flight. I have to adjust and find the target, right? Also the agility of how your weapons delivery system is carried. What do I mean by that? Well, your stance, your footwork, that's your weapons delivery system. So in real life, right now we're in front of the camera, we can't move so much, but in real life there's lots of subtle movements, right? If he and I both know that we're gonna punch each other in the face and we're skilled, then chances are, then when we throw our punch, we're both gonna move our heads out of the way, right? Because who wants to get punched in the face, right? Yeah. So a lot of tools I'm giving you. One that we also train is we train getting punched in the face. Now you might think, well, that's sort of sadistic and crazy. Well, when did I ever say I wasn't sadistic and crazy? Just kidding. What I'm talking about is using gear. So, for example, I can use something like a face shield like this, and then in this case, the other person would use the MMA gloves so they wouldn't scratch the face shield or their hands get injured on the face shield. And the idea is we're going to be using this to control your ability to deal with fear. So in other words, he puts this on and I punch him in the face. And in the beginning, I'm punching him very, very, very lightly because I'm working on accuracy, right? He's not just standing there either, right? So what he's working on when he's got the shield on is first when it's nice and slow, I'll do without the shield but without hurting him. He's dealing with owning it, that he's going to get hit in the face and this is happening, right? This is happening, right? What if your hands weren't there in time, right? Even yesterday, someone commented saying your hands were too low. Right?
Oh, really? I didn't
well, there's always somebody, right? Here's the problem. I'm trying to communicate something to you through a camera. And so if I'm talking to you like this, you can't see anything I'm doing, right?
Yeah. It also really depends too, because I could be baiting, or I'm purposely keeping it low. Actually, a lot of the body stance is kind of purposely low, so I can still follow up with a hook. If my hands are always high, I have to drop before I throw up. So, there's always strategy between that too.
Yeah, I think too is what paradigm are we looking at?
Yeah,
right?
If I really need to protect my head, then I'm going to keep them up. But if I don't think I need to yet, I can use my dodging ability to protect myself instead. I have more versatile tools with that mid guard or mid hand instead of all the way up by the face.
And then
not that I don't know how to do that, of course, because that's a different tool. Again, we're talking about different tools.
And then what's the paradigm?
Yeah.
Is the paradigm that we're doing like light kickboxing type of sparring, in which case he's also got to worry about kicks and everything, right? Yeah. Or is it the opposite? Are you only working on boxing range? Mm-hmm. And if I'm only wearing boxing range and I'm only using gloves, then it actually makes sense to do this because the gloves are this huge padded shield, right?
Shield, yeah.
But with no gloves, go ahead and do the boxing thing.
Yeah.
With no gloves, with my power, I basically make him hit himself if I punch him in the hand, right? Because there's no pillow. And I could actually fracture the back of his hand. The metacarpals are quite easy to fracture.
So on a pillow, I should use my palm instead.
Yeah, right.
Or my forearm.
Right. This is why we have multiple utilities that we can use to deal with incoming problems. But then again, also for real life, what are you communicating to somebody else with a camera phone if someone's bothering you and you're right away like this? It looks like you want trouble. It looks like you want to fight, right? As opposed to I'm like, hey, calm down, everything's cool. So you might think my hands are down, but this is clearly communicating to my opponent, not necessarily to anyone else, that there's an honorable out here. We can agree to disagree and walk away. Also, what am I also anticipating? In real life, it might not be a punch to the face. They might try to double leg me and take me to the ground for a ground and pound. You don't know. So I have a high level of adaptability maybe with my hands not so high. So the thing is, you don't want to be fixed. It's part of the principles. It's part of the principles and concepts of the art. You don't want to be locked in to only one way of doing everything. So you want to train yourself to be highly adaptable. My favorite saying that I've been saying for years, from when he first started anyways, I try to mold these guys into being like a human Swiss Army knife or a human Leatherman tool. You have one frame that all your tools come out of, right? But you know, you're not just a screwdriver. You're also scissors and a knife and an axe and everything else that's in your Swiss Army knife or your Leatherman tool. You're a pair of pliers, whatever you need to be, right? You want to be flexible, adaptable, capable of dealing with all kinds of problems. So anyway, there's always going to be a criticism to anything, right? But it's all contextual. What's the context of the situation? Also yesterday, someone asked them about stance. Well, of course, not knowing the exact circumstances of the question, his answer yesterday would be exactly what I taught him, which is neutrality. You're 50-50. Your rear heel is slightly up so that you have that mobility, but your weight is pretty evenly distributed. That way you can fade to kick or defensively strike. You can shift out of the way in either direction, or you can propel forward to attack and on all of the angles. To be neutral allows you the most freedom of opportunity. Now, again, the person who asked the question wasn't real specific, right? If they said that you're going to wrestle somebody, well then you want more positive. You want more positive, more power forward, because you're countering their ability to fold you and take you down, right? It might be the opposite if we were dealing with only kicking, right? I don't want my head to get kicked. I'm going to be a little bit more back and be able to use my lead foot to intercept. So, I mean, what's the situation, right? What's the situation? So if you're talking just generally, balance is the deal. So you're in a flexible 50-50 that can change at any moment, not fixed. If you're dealing with a specific paradigm, then be specific in your question.
Very good. And actually, we're way over time. We definitely got to go to teach our class soon. So thank you guys again for joining us. If you guys have questions that we didn't get to, remember to comment it below after this video goes up, and we will address it next time or in one of the videos coming up. But thanks again, and thank you, Tony, for supporting us.
Tony the mechanic.
Yes, for the super chat, and we appreciate you guys.
Aloha.